My mother was afraid I would force her to have an abortion, so to hide her pregnancy, she tightly wrapped her belly with bandages every day. As a result, my younger brother was born with disabled legs. Because of this, my mother hated me intensely and told everyone that my brother was actually my illegitimate child. Driven to despair, I leaped from a high building. After being reborn, I calculated the timing perfectly and exposed my mother's pregnancy during a family gathering. My father's face darkened, because by the timeline, this child couldn't possibly be his. Congratulations, am I going to have a little brother? Holding the pregnancy test I had prepared in advance, I walked over from the direction of the private room's restroom and naturally hugged my mother, smiling genuinely. What nonsense are you talking? Where did you get that pregnancy test? You can't just pick up random things. Could it be that you've been fooling around outside and now want to pin it on me? When my mom saw what I was holding, a flicker of guilt flashed in her eyes, but she turned around and accused me instead. Today was the day for a family gathering. Under the sidelong glances of those around us, I waved the pregnancy test in my hand again, feeling somewhat disappointed. I found this pregnancy test on the counter in your bathroom. I thought you might be pregnant. Don't you dare blame me for this. After exchanging pleasantries with everyone, I directly added 2 dishes to the menu with a wave of my hand, one of which was Purslane, which pregnant women should avoid. Although my mother didn't admit it, the pregnancy test didn't appear out of thin air, so the relatives were naturally somewhat skeptical. So when the stir-fried Purslane was served, everyone simultaneously turned their gaze toward my mother. Even my dad noticed. Honey, aren't you all about healthy eating and love wild vegetables the most? Let me serve you some. I've been having a cold stomach lately, and the doctor said wild vegetables aren't suitable for me. My mom replied with a smile, waving her hand gracefully. Though her smile seemed slightly forced, from an angle no one noticed, she shot me a fierce glare, as if to say, "You just wait," pretending not to notice. I continued eating with a smile until the exquisitely plated sashimi was served. At which point I set down my chopsticks. The plate of sashimi made its way around the table and finally stopped in front of her. To trigger her morning sickness, I had specifically instructed the waiter earlier not to remove the fishy smell in advance. Just serve it with wasabi dipping sauce. At that moment, the strong fishy odor instantly wafted toward her. My mother's hand, holding the chopsticks, suddenly loosened, and she couldn't help but lean against the table, starting to retch uncontrollably. Ugh, the sounds grew louder one after another. By the time she returned from the restroom, who wouldn't have understood? Darling, slow down. How long has it been? Why did you keep it from everyone? My father quickly helped my mother sit down, clearly overjoyed, having a child at their age. Of course he was delighted, but my mother's face was as pale as paper, showing no trace of happiness. I can't remember exactly. I'll ask the doctor later. My mother shook her head, unwilling to say more, probably because she couldn't even remember the last time she had been intimate with my father. After all, lies are easily exposed. Sister-in-law, really, the child just guessed it, and you still refuse to admit it. Are you afraid I'd harm you? My aunt snorted coldly, thinking my mother's behavior was a sign of distrust toward her. It's not her fault for overthinking. It's just that my eldest aunt has a son, while my father only has me, a daughter. Over the years, there have been many attempts to persuade my father to transfer his shares to her son. If my mother gives birth to a son this time, then naturally, the shares of the Lin Group in my father's hands won't go to her son. That pregnancy test, I bet it's clearly yours. Judging by your reaction, you must have known about your pregnancy for a while, yet deliberately hid it from everyone. This is my second aunt, who has also been eyeing my father's shares, before his passing. Grandpa left most of the shares to my dad, while each of my aunts received only 0.5%, a pitifully small amount. They were already resentful and secretly wished for my dad to have no heirs, so their own children could inherit more shares. I was just afraid that revealing it too soon would ruin the surprise. Cece, Mom shouldn't have doubted you earlier. I apologize. My mom was caught in a dilemma. Rather than continuing to deny that the pregnancy test wasn't hers, it was better to admit it openly and end the conversation. Still, being forced to publicly announce her pregnancy like this must have been incredibly uncomfortable for her, right? It's fine, Mom, I'm really happy for you. I hope this one's a brother. Dad's billions will finally have an heir. I pretended to be thrilled, hugging her before toasting my dad with a glass of wine. She looked at the stiff smile. But my father was beaming with joy. Having a child in his later years was proof of his enduring vitality. The meal quickly ended amidst the sarcastic remarks from my aunts. After returning home, my usually good-tempered father suddenly darkened his expression. Suppressing his anger, he said to me, "Cece, go back to your room first. I need to talk to your mom about something." I obediently nodded, lifted the hem of my gown, and went upstairs, quietly turning on the surveillance in my father's study. With many servants at home, my father preferred discussing matters in his study. Early this morning, I had sneaked in to install a hidden camera, just to witness the scene. In the video, my father, abandoning his usual refined demeanor, frowned and looked down at my mother, demanding, "How many weeks along is the child in your belly? Have you seen a doctor?" 3.5 weeks, my mother replied cautiously. "It matches. I'll go with you for the prenatal checkup later." "If this baby is a boy, that would be perfect." My father's furrowed brows finally relaxed, and a smile returned to his face. By the time he went to the window to answer the phone, my mother's forehead was already covered in sweat, a clear sign of her guilt. My father must have sensed something was off. After all, he was always a highly suspicious person. The fact that she deliberately hid the pregnancy was highly suspicious. This was probably the real reason she concealed her baby bump in her past life. She must have someone on the outside. Judging by how deeply she's involved, she must have fallen for him for real, enough to risk having his child while still married. So, in my past life, I was nothing more than a stepping stone for her illegitimate child. If I hadn't died, how could her disabled illegitimate child have inherited all of my father's shares? My mother had deliberately chosen the day my father was away on business for her prenatal checkup. But how could I let such a perfect opportunity slip by? During breakfast in the morning, I smiled and said to my dad, "I'll go to Shaman for you. Mom has a prenatal checkup today, so you should spend more time with her." "No need, I can manage on my own." My mom quickly declined, her hands trembling so much she could barely hold the soup spoon, her face turning noticeably pale. "You should, you're an older mother, and it's only right for Dad to spend more time with you and the baby. It's part of prenatal education too." "Then you can go to Shaman for me. You should be familiar with Uncle Zhang as well." Hearing me mention the baby in my mom's belly, my dad, thinking about having a child at his age, didn't refuse anymore and let me go in his place. When we left the house, my mother seemed extremely nervous. According to the servants at home, she had made several excuses to go for prenatal checkups at a private hospital run by her friend, but my father had refused each time. The more nervous she became, the more my father sensed something was off. Naturally, he wouldn't allow the prenatal checkup to be done at a private hospital, fearing her friend might interfere. He insisted on taking her to a public hospital for the examination. During the ultrasound, when men weren't allowed in, my father had 2 maids accompany her the entire time to ensure she had no chance to bribe the doctor. Soon, they received the pregnancy report. The fetus was already 5 weeks and 3 days old. When my dad saw the pregnancy test report, his face immediately fell. "I didn't touch you during those days. I was in England on business." "Whose child is in your belly?" "Maybe I remembered wrong. It must have been that one night you were drunk, and I helped you back to your room. That's when it happened, after so many years of marriage. I didn't bring it up. You probably don't remember either. There's surveillance in the living room. You can check if I helped you that night." My mom kept making excuses because she knew that once she admitted it, there would be no turning back, only divorce, and she didn't want to give up her life as a wealthy wife. She could only use that one time he was blackout drunk to muddle through. Is that so? My dad did indeed get drunk one of those days, and when he woke up, my mom was lying right beside him. So this child really could be his. Thinking this, his expression softened once more. "Of course that's how it is. After all these years as an old married couple, you doubt me. Isn't it wonderful to have a child in our later years? Why must you be so suspicious of me?" My mom began her signature act, tears welling up but not quite falling, looking utterly pitiful. Having been an actress for several years in her youth, her acting skills were truly exceptional. Seeing her cry so pitifully, my father's heart melted even more. As he spoke, he leaned over and gently patted my mother's hand, his tone filled with affection. "Take good care of the pregnancy. If it really is a son, all my assets will be his in the future. After saying this, he excused himself by saying he was very busy with work and turned to leave. I thought the suspicion in his heart wouldn't be so easily dispelled, because the next day, when I suggested to my dad over the phone that we hire a private investigator to follow my mother, he didn't refuse and said, "Find a good one, I'll pay, just make sure your mother doesn't find out. Don't worry, Dad, I won't let some outsider's bastard lay a finger on your assets, unless it really is my brother. Then I'll accept it." These words greatly pleased my father, as he believed his daughter was firmly on his side. Sure enough, after the call ended, my phone showed a transfer of 5 million yuan, with a note from my dad. "The extra is your pocket money." Then I hired 2 private detectives at the same time, aiming to be fair, one for him and one for my mom. If my mom has issues, he's certainly no saint either. In my past life, when my mom framed me and caused my death, he didn't say a word, silently allowing it all to happen. Clearly, my existence was in his way too. This anticipation weighed heavily on my heart. If both of them had issues, I would be caught in the middle. Soon after my dad went on a business trip, my mom quietly sneaked off to a high-end villa district. Fortunately, I also own a property in that villa area. Otherwise, a private investigator wouldn't have been able to get in at all. The content was quite sensational. The person my mom was having an affair with was a young singer-dancer in his early 20s, working in the entertainment industry but still relatively unknown. The only small concert he had ever held was sponsored by my mom's niche clothing brand. The 2 individuals met cautiously, entering a certain villa one after the other. Since they had drawn the curtains, the private detective only managed to capture footage 5 hours later, showing my mother emerging from the villa first and quickly getting into a car parked by the roadside before driving away. However, thanks to the detective's highly advanced equipment, the images were exceptionally clear. When zoomed in, the photos even revealed fresh kiss marks on my mother's neck as she left the villa, and the sapphire ring she had been wearing was missing. Half an hour later, the young man emerged from the villa, noticeably in a change of clothes, and headed straight to a pawnshop to pawn the very same sapphire ring my mother had given him. After receiving the photos and videos, I immediately sent them to my dad. Although posting them directly online would ruin my mom's reputation faster, I need to maximize the benefits. I want revenge. But I can't let her scandal affect the company's stock price and, consequently, the value of my shares. After receiving the message, my dad hung up the phone without a word. The housekeeper said he locked himself in his room for an entire day after the call. It wasn't until 20 hours later that he called me, his voice thick with exhaustion, likely having stayed up all night. "You've handled this very well. Don't expose it to the media. I'll take care of the rest." I agreed immediately, then pretended as if nothing had happened and continued to focus on my work and studies. In my spare time, I had already started helping my father with some company matters, but my main task for now was still my education. I had to graduate from university with outstanding grades to earn my father's approval, officially join the company, and eventually take it over. When there was noise in the living room at night, I pushed the door open and looked downstairs. My mother came back in high spirits, carrying large and small shopping bags. Seeing me, she snorted coldly, "What are you looking at?" "Checking to see if I'm still alive." Ever since I exposed her pregnancy, she's been throwing all kinds of cold remarks at me over the past 2 months. The decades-long pretense of motherly affection and filial piety has been completely dropped. We've pretty much torn off all pretenses now. She resents me for being a traitor, and I've long given up on her, wishing she'd just meet her end sooner. "Nothing much, just thought your belly seems a bit bigger." I glanced at her slightly protruding stomach and silently wished her good luck. "Of course, my son will be perfectly healthy, and everything in this family will belong to your younger brother. Don't even think about it." The moment the topic of her pregnancy comes up, my mother now swells with pride. Some mock her for being an old oyster bearing a pearl, while others flatter her by saying she's carrying a dragon prince, claiming this pregnancy is especially precious. She thought she had fooled my father, and in recent months, she's become particularly brazen. At home, if anyone displeases her, she immediately lashes out. "Be careful not to bump into my belly. The child in my womb is priceless. Once he's born, you'll all be finished. Then I wish you a speedy delivery of your precious son, too. Hope she can carry this pregnancy to term safely. because this child is nothing short of a death warrant. If I recall correctly, in my past life, when I finally met this so-called younger brother, he bore an uncanny resemblance to that minor celebrity. People even joked that I had a celebrity look. At night, I made an excuse that I wanted to stay on campus today and return to the dormitory. I occasionally spend a few nights at school. When I'm not home, the two of them can argue without any restraint. I don't know how they argued this time. I didn't eavesdrop and instead slept soundly until dawn. When I got home, I found the housekeeper cleaning up the study. I stole a glance inside. Everything breakable had been smashed. Porcelain vases and glass fish tanks lay shattered on the floor, and the computer was in pieces, suggesting an exceptionally fierce battle. Where are they? I asked the housekeeper. The master accompanied the mistress to the hospital early this morning. I heard they were going for an amniocentesis. Someone whispered to me, "Did my mother agree?" My father still holds a glimmer of hope for that child. My mother's skills in handling men are truly impressive. Even in such a situation, she managed to temporarily deceive him, even if the madam was unwilling. There was nothing she could do. The master had the bodyguards escort her there by force. When she left, her face was pale, her knees covered in blood, and the master's hand was injured too. The scene back then was horrifying to recall even now. She had never seen the master lose his temper so badly. I couldn't openly indulge in my parents' drama either. After packing some clothes in my room, I had the servant relay that I'd continue staying at school for the next few days before hurrying out the door. I planned to lay low for a while to avoid being kept awake when they got the results and started arguing. A few hours later, while I was having lunch in the cafeteria, I received a call from my mom. She was crying hysterically on the other end. "You wretched girl. Are you happy now? Your dad wants a divorce, and it's all because you egged him on behind my back, isn't it? He had already decided to trust me this once. And you ruined it, you troublemaker." Did the paternity test results come out? Was it the little stars or my dad's? I raised an eyebrow, ready to enjoy the drama up close. "So you knew all along. You're my own flesh and blood, yet you didn't stand by me or even give me a heads up. I might as well have raised you for nothing," she screamed at me over the phone. It seems she not only feels no shame about this, but instead blames everything on my refusal to help her. Utterly ridiculous. Her infidelity wasn't something I encouraged, so how could it be my fault? "Did I tell you to cheat? Did I tell you to get pregnant? If you hadn't been so greedy, you wouldn't have been caught. Anyway, I'm hanging up now." I refused to take the blame and replied coldly, "It was just a matter of the heart. You wouldn't understand. Anyway, your father and I are getting divorced now. Who do you choose? If you stand by me, together we can secure more shares, and it'll be easier to sell them at a high price later." Afraid I'd really hang up, she quickly revealed her true motive. "This is exactly why my mom called. At this point, she's still scheming against me. I'm not choosing you. You choose your dad. You're out of your mind." She instinctively assumed I'd pick my father. "No, I choose myself. I'm already 18, and I won't follow anyone. Don't even think about laying a finger on what's rightfully mine." With that, I hung up the phone directly. Since I answered the call on speakerphone to prevent her from framing my cheap brother on me out of revenge in the future, my dorm roommates had already heard every word of our conversation clearly. Such a juicy piece of gossip would take them a while to digest, and by the time they're done, the whole school would know about it. But without concrete evidence, these rumors wouldn't be enough to hurt the company's stock price. After the afternoon class ended, my dad came to pick me up specially. In the car, he handed me an agreement. "Sign this, and you'll always be my precious daughter." I picked it up and looked. It was a waiver of inheritance rights. Does he really think I'm that stupid? Do I look like someone who's easy to fool? "I won't sign." Before he could even pull a long face, I pulled out a series of recordings from my phone and sent them to him. "I think you need to see these first. This is the evidence previously uncovered by a private investigator, and now it's my lifeline. All of it is proof of my father's infidelity during his marriage, including a 6-year-old illegitimate child and his secret mistress. This must be the reason he condoned my mother's actions that led to my death in my past life. He probably wanted my mother and me to destroy each other so he could benefit from the conflict and leave all the assets to that illegitimate child. You investigated me. I'm your father." My dad's kindly face twisted with sudden rage. He probably never expected that while I was investigating my mother, I'd also become suspicious of him. My mom has wronged me just the same. Put away your hypocritical faces. Let's stick to the facts. He and my mom are now preparing for divorce. If evidence of his affair surfaces now, it would disadvantage him in the asset division. Naturally, he's both anxious and furious right now. After speaking, I began negotiating terms with him. I don't want your shares. The luxury apartment downtown under your name goes to me, as well as the villa in the suburbs. The 3 shops on Qingjing Street are also mine, plus 100 million as startup capital. Then, I'll stay out of your affairs with my mom, and I won't hand any of this over to her. My father's expression finally relaxed a bit. He knew very well in his heart that compared to shares worth hundreds of millions, what I was asking for was just a drop in the bucket. Compared to my mother's insatiable greed, I seem much more adorable. I agree, but you must also promise me one condition. Have a meal tomorrow with your brother and his mother, and acknowledge his status as the future heir. He quickly gave in. I agree. A perfect opportunity to provoke my mother. How could I refuse? Can these videos be deleted? He was afraid I would continue to use them to threaten him or sell them. I have many backups. I'm a smart person and don't want to fight to the death with you. In the future, I want to marry into a family of equal status, and I'll still need you as my support. We can help each other succeed. Did he really think deleting them would solve everything? As expected, my father didn't say anything more and politely had someone escort me back to school. Only I knew that only by demanding just the right amount could he spare my life. Ask for too much, and he would kill me out of reluctance to part with his wealth. Ask for too little, and he would think I'm stalling for time, plotting something sinister, and then seize the opportunity to eliminate me. Now, I'm asking for just the right amount, enough to show my greed but also my willingness to side with him. He has no reason to take the risk of having me killed. However, my mother wasn't content with just a divorce. She wanted too much. Money, the house, shares, and even the safe birth of that illegitimate child. The very next day after my dad mentioned divorce to her, my mom pulled some strings and appeared as a guest on a live reality show. She had been in the entertainment industry before, and now, with the title of a CEO's wife, returning to that circle was a piece of cake. During the show, while casually chatting, my mom suddenly burst into tears. My husband and I have decided to divorce. 20 years of marriage have come to an end. But I just feel sorry for the child in my womb. She was certain that my dad, being concerned about his reputation, wouldn't publicly reveal that he had been cheated on. She wanted to use public opinion to make my dad go easier on her. Because of her reckless move, the internet immediately erupted in criticism against my dad and our family's conglomerate, and the stock price also dropped somewhat. She misjudged the situation. She thought my dad feared public opinion. But what he truly fears is damage to his interests. Her actions caused significant losses to the company, so my dad directly ordered a ban on the young man she was supporting. After losing several jobs in a row, the young man was so terrified that he immediately broke up with my mom. No matter how my mom tried to persuade him to stay, it was useless. That very night, the young man bought a plane ticket and fled abroad, even declaring he would never return to the country in his lifetime. However, this was just the beginning. Once my father decided to take action, it wasn't just a simple warning. He took the evidence of my mother's affair that he obtained from me and directly posted it online using the company's official account, openly stating that the assets had been divided and the legal divorce proceedings were underway. Fans of the young heartthrob and curious onlookers quickly flooded my mother's Weibo comments, unleashing a torrent of abuse. Our idol is barely in his 20s. How could this old witch even think of going after him? She had an affair herself, yet still had the audacity to accuse her ex-husband of being heartless online. How shameless. The one in her belly is probably an illegitimate child too. I hope she gets kicked out of the entertainment industry for good and stops polluting my site. What childhood goddess. Disgusting. Now, the entertainment industry my mom always dreamed of is probably gone for good. Sure enough, a few hours later, she received a ban notice from a certain broadcasting authority. Adultery, keeping a male celebrity as a lover, and slandering her ex-husband. These 3 charges all represented her moral corruption, and the entertainment industry could no longer tolerate her. After divorcing my father, she would go from being the wife of a CEO to the owner of a niche clothing brand. On paper, she still sounded like a wealthy businesswoman, but in reality, Her niche clothing brand hadn't been doing well in recent years, the prices were too high, the designs too unconventional, and there weren't enough willing buyers. The business had been losing money for years. With her in such a state, those wealthy socialites would no longer keep her as a friend. After being kicked out of several wealthy wives groups, she finally panicked because the elite social circle she had been so proud of could no longer tolerate her. When she came to see me at school again, it was at a cafe near the campus. She was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, fully armed, as if afraid someone might recognize her. My mother, looking like a frightened rat scurrying across the street. "Cece, help me, I want to apologize to your dad, but he refuses to see me. I've tried everywhere. Please pass on a message. I need to see him, but Dad wouldn't want to see you, unless it's at the Civil Affairs Bureau. But those shares, I think they're too little." She still wanted more. "Then there's nothing I can do. I think my father has already started taking action against your clothing brand. You won't have much time left to agree to the divorce." After saying that, I ignored her, picked up the small bag on the table, turned and left. Everything my father promised to give me had already been transferred to my name yesterday. I'm safe for now. If I get involved in this matter again because of my mother, I might very well be killed for angering my father, but I want to live. I want to live more than anyone else. 2 days later, my mother's proud clothing brand indeed ran into trouble. At first, someone came to the store causing a scene, claiming the fabric was toxic, even alarming the quality inspection department. After thorough investigations, it was indeed found that some of the clothing materials had issues of inferior substitutes, a problem many brands have faced. But for it to surface at such a sensitive time undoubtedly had something to do with my father. In order to save the brand, my mother had no choice but to tell my father's secretary that she agreed to an immediate divorce and would not cause any more trouble. The day they got divorced, my mother's belly was already prominently swollen. When she somewhat awkwardly followed my father to the Civil Affairs Bureau, many people around were whispering about her. After they both signed the papers, my father left immediately. I didn't leave. I asked her, "Do you regret it?" "What?" She didn't understand. "Do you regret divorcing my dad for that bastard?" Nowadays, all the young pretty boys have fled abroad. I don't understand why she would still choose to bring this illegitimate child into the world, risking her own ruin. Its existence would make my dad feel like he's been wearing a cuckold's horns his whole life. I don't regret it. I just wanted to prove to all those who once said I couldn't bear a son, that I can. The one who truly couldn't father a son was your dad. With that, she proudly pulled out a prenatal report from her bag, done overseas, which clearly stated it was a male fetus, the son she had longed for all these years. How could my father possibly not have a son? I was surprised. Was she just talking nonsense? After all, the illegitimate child he has outside is almost in elementary school now. His body naturally lacks an X chromosome, so it's impossible for him to have a son. Back then, I was the one who picked up his medical report, so I know this best. Seeing that I didn't believe her, my mother pulled up a long-saved scanned image of my father's medical report from her phone to show me. My aunts have been mocking her relentlessly over the years for not being able to give my father a son, taunting her for not having the fate to bear a son. This has always been a sore spot for her. Does my father know about this? Back then, to spare his feelings, I made up an excuse and brushed it off. He doesn't know I went to get the report, so my father doesn't know he can't have a son, so the so-called illegitimate child is actually someone else's son. Just thinking about him raising another man's son for 6 years makes me laugh. This is getting more and more interesting. After getting my dad's medical report from my mom, I couldn't resist stirring the pot and immediately sent it to him on WeChat. I even kindly advised him, get a paternity test, don't keep being the fool. My dad didn't reply to me right away. Probably panicking himself at the moment, he didn't respond, but that didn't stop me from enjoying the drama. Right after my parents' divorce, my dad's mistress couldn't wait to move into our house with her child the very same day. Thanks to the home security cameras, I had a front row seat to everything that happened next. Before the mistress could even set down her luggage, her child was abruptly dragged out by bodyguards who barged in and shoved the kid into a car. Rumor has it they were taken to a paternity testing center, where my dad was already waiting. Half a day later, the rushed results came out. That bastard child indeed wasn't my father's either, probably the mistress's secret love child with someone else. planted on my dad to frame him. Within minutes of seeing the results, my father was so enraged he fainted on the spot and had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. By the time I reached the hospital, Dad was already in surgery. The doctors said it was an acute myocardial infarction triggered by extreme fury. His condition was critical, and they were doing everything possible to save him. 5 hours later, my father was wheeled out of the operating room. A few more hours passed, and he finally opened his eyes. When he saw everyone in the hospital room, his first words were, "I want to amend my will. All my assets, including shares, will go to my only daughter. Now, his mistress and that illegitimate child won't get a single penny." Now that he had no other choice, rather than leaving the money to outsiders, he chose to leave it to his only bloodline. I was overjoyed, calling him Dad repeatedly and telling him to rest well. The mistress outside was holding her son, crying her heart out, yet there was nothing she could do. She had schemed for so long, never expecting to end up with nothing. A fitting retribution. During my father's hospitalization, I chose to take a temporary leave from school to manage the group on his behalf. By the time he was discharged, the group was entirely under my control, and I had become its de facto leader. As for my mother, a few months later, she gave birth to a fair and chubby son, the son she had longed for day and night. The child was very healthy and bore a striking resemblance to that young heartthrob, which kept her happy for quite some time. However, after leaving my father, her clothing brand quickly went bankrupt, leaving her heavily in debt. As a result, she had no choice but to sell her shares in the group to me to repay her debts. After settling her debts, her life became financially strained, and raising the child turned into a laborious and difficult process. For this reason, she asked me more than once to help her raise her younger brother, saying that he and I were related by blood, but I never met her even once. Since she values that bastard so much, she can raise him herself. I have no intention of being taken for a fool. Several years later, by chance, I ran into my mother at a shopping mall. She looked much older, her health was no longer what it used to be, and she kept coughing as she walked. There was no sign of the little boy by her side. Later, I asked around and found out that due to financial difficulties, she had ultimately chosen to give the child up for adoption 2 years prior. In the end, it turned out to be a futile effort, gaining nothing at all.